Welcome to the Troutwood Speaker Series. I am Gene with Troutwood. Today we have a very special guest. He does not know I'm going to introduce him this way, but a man who, in my opinion, is the most influential person in America in the financial literacy arena in our K through 12 schools. The co-founder of Next Gen Personal Finance, my friend Tim Ranzetta. And our topic today is the path to Mission 2030. Tim, welcome.
Gene, great to be here. And yeah, I just have to correct you on that introduction. I think the most influential people in the financial education arena are the 43,000 teachers, and as well as folks such as yourself in the ecosystem, kind of making such a difference in providing great resources.
I'll second the educators, but point out that you are humble, Tim. I'm excited to unwrap, Tim, and just learn your journey, learn what others can do to help Next Gen, to help people listening understand what Mission 2030 is and how important it is. Before even diving in, though, let's go non-finance. I want to know, where are you joining us from, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
I currently live in Palo Alto, California, just about a mile and a half from the Stanford University campus. So this is actually the last place in the world I would have ever expected to live, having grown up in northern New Jersey. But yeah, grad school took me out here in the early 90s, and I've been here since. Just great environment. If you are an entrepreneur, it's there is something in the drinking water here in terms of that spirit of innovation and the ecosystem that exists, just in terms of the talent pool, and again, that can-do attitude that you can create organizations here that are really going to make a difference in the world.
I've been out on Stanford's campus once, and I remember seeing more bikes than cars across the community. Is that still the case?
It is. You got to be careful actually walking around campus, because they don't always stay in the bike lanes either.
Tim, tell it before going next year. So what's the background? What was your inspiration? What kind of got you ticking and thinking about this financial education journey?
Yeah. So first of all, I got to start with my parents, because they were my first teachers when it came to money. We were very unusual in that we did talk about money quite a bit. My father was a banker. I was the fifth child of six. Neither one of my parents had a four-year college degree, but it was clear that was going to be something that was very important, that we would each accomplish. However, we were firmly in the middle class, which meant, we earned too much to get financial aid, but too little in order to pay our way through school. So it was like instilled in me. I don't remember ever being told you're going to need to pay for college if you want to go. But that was started with a dog walking job at the age of 7, shoveling snow when it's, for many people, snow is an inconvenience. For me, it was an entrepreneurial opportunity. Raked leaves, caddied, 8 summers at a golf course, and basically paid 75% of my way through school. But so that was those were the lessons I had growing up. My dad was a genius too, in terms of saving schemes where, he would contribute to our education, but it was always on a matching basis. So he was kind of like, every dollar you saved, I'll match you 50 cents, up to a certain amount. So those lessons were instilled in me early. So that was a tremendous gift my parents gave, as well as, my mom was she had 6 kids, but that wasn't enough for her. So she was the community volunteer. She was the Girl Scout. Girl Scout leader. She wrote the parish newsletter. She worked at the soup kitchen. She was somebody who was very much out there in terms of supporting the community. So I kind of feel like I got tremendous gifts from my parents. And then I was an entrepreneur for about 15, 20 years in the private sector. And then, as chance would have it, about a decade ago, I volunteered to teach a personal finance course at an amazing high school, Eastside College Prep, which is in a neighboring community, East Palo Alto, serving first-generation students who wanted to be first in their family to go to college. And so incoming 9th graders, I wasn't sure what I was in for when I first volunteered. So I did what everybody else does. You go out and Google and look for curriculum. I needed to come up with 25 hours. And really didn't see, there were a lot of workbooks that I would have needed to order. And I think because I was starting this process about 2 weeks before school started, I wasn't sure the workbooks were going to arrive on time. So I needed to cobble together a course. And the good news is there's a lot of great resources on the internet. The bad news is you got to wade through a lot of garbage before you get there. And so it was in the process of creating that course where I said, you know what, there's thousands, tens of thousands of people teaching this at high schools. Like, I wonder how many of them are doing the exact same thing I'm doing, which is curating resources. Can I create something? So that was the nugget of the idea. And then when I went and taught these students, and I just saw the impact, I saw how excited they were to talk about money. And then in this community, the students who were in this program were lower income, Black or brown students seeking to be first in their family to go to college, and recognizing that if you teach the students well, they were taking this home to their parents. And so I started getting emails from parents. Hey, I hear you know something about money. You know, David came home today to talk about investing. I'd love to sit down and learn more about it too. And you just recognize, boy, the ripple effect of teaching these students well can go far beyond the classroom. So I was hooked. That was a decade ago. I've taught that class 9 of the last 10 summers. Unfortunately, COVID last year prevented them from having a summer program. But I think that kind of fired me up to do something. And it was about 3 years after I started teaching that I formally set up Next Gen Personal Finance.
There was a book that was popular in my kids' elementary school. What do you do with an idea? You start Next Gen Personal Finance. Tim, I'm going to backtrack on 3 questions for younger listeners. What age did you open your bank account? Your first bank account?
I was 7, and these were the days where there were passbooks. Like they would literally stamp your passbook. And again, I had a dog walking job. That was the best. My neighbor broke her hip. Her Jack Russell Terrier, pulled her over one night, and so she needed somebody to walk Dice, her dog. And so I did that. It took her a long time to recover. I probably did it for a full year, 3 times a day. Boy, I learned responsibility at a young age, because if you didn't get that dog out for a walk, Mrs. Battiston was not going to be happy. But every Friday she gave me a crisp $5 bill, and I took that $5 bill and I walked a third of a mile down to the United Jersey Bank. Here's this, 7-year-old kid depositing money every Friday. And then at the dinner table, I'd pull the passbook out. My dad would take a look at it. And, it was like over the course of a year, that's $250, which to a 7-year-old kid, that would buy a lot of baseball cards. I didn't actually buy a lot of baseball cards. I don't think my dad told me I could take money out of that account until I didn't think I realized I could take money out of that account until I was in college, which was probably a good thing because I needed every dime.
That's an interesting perspective. My 9-year-old and my 10-year-old have bank accounts, but they don't realize they can touch the money either.
So one funny story about the bank account. So I think she may have given me a raise later on in the year, because I made a $7 deposit one day, and I came home, I looked at my bank book, and instead of $7, it said $700. And again, like, I'm a 7-year-old kid. There's suddenly this, and my dad said, before you get any ideas, you're going down to the bank teller and you're telling her. Boy, I got to tell you, she was a little embarrassed. She probably had trouble balancing the books from the night before. But $700 bank error in your favor. And that was another great lesson from my dad. Like, no, you're going to do the right thing here. Don't even think about it.
Very powerful. So following a bank account, I'm curious, what age did you open your first investing account?
Yeah, that came much later. Yeah, it's funny because I needed every dime for college. Like I had this ledger form, this legal sheet, which actually ended up appearing in a New York Times article when I was I think it was my senior year in high school, where I was mapping out how am I going to pay for college. And I think I graduated with about $100 in my savings account. So I was not in a position to think long-term. So my first investment account was Quick and Riley in Boston, went down to their brokerage, took half of my first paycheck, and invested in the next high-flying company called, hold on to your seats for this one, Check Robot. This was a company that was going to revolutionize the checkout at major retailers. So this is 1989, fall of 1989. I was so excited. Like, my roommate had done some research. They were going to get big contracts with Kroger. Like, it made all the sense in the world, right? Unfortunately, we were about 20 years too early, right? Like, you go to Home Depot now, you can do the automated checkout. It took a lot longer. Good, important lesson though. I think I lost half that. No, I lost more. It was a $7 stock. I think I sold it at $2. So good lesson that, about the perils. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I think after that point, I got interested in mutual funds. And then soon thereafter, I got interested in index funds. So it took a little while. I think there's a life cycle when it comes to investing. I think when you're new to the game, you think you can pick stocks that will do well. Like, you have an edge, you have you have intuition. And then I think the more time you spend investing, the more, at least in my history, I'm glad I learned those lessons in my 20s.
A friend from the industry has told me that the worst thing that can happen to an individual is getting that first trade right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I spent a year in the investment management world. After getting an MBA, I went to work for a money management firm out of Boston. And part of that process of getting a job is you have to pitch them a stock. And so I had done so you have to come in and you have to do your research, talk about why you invested. And so at the time, and this was 1994, 95, and I was talking about Motorola. And so I had invested a couple $100 in Motorola over a 3-month period. Maybe it was up 20%. So I'm like, this is great. I'm going to come in with this story, and this portfolio manager, the person who's going to make the hiring decision, boy, he's going to really be impressed. So I get through this thesis. I get through the modeling that I had done. And then he stares, and then I'm like, and the stock was up 20%. And he's like, over what time period? I said, over like 3 months. Like, that's a really good investment. He's like, you got lucky. What? Yeah. So I think I learned the difference between, volatility in the market and not getting confused that has anything to do with your genius. Of course, we all know what happened to Motorola later.
Life lessons are powerful, and the younger we learn them, the more powerful.
Yeah.
Tim, you said something I want to jump back to, and I'm going to bridge it to your graduating with $100 and then ultimately to founding NextGen. You said you took an entrepreneurial mind to walking dogs. So at an early age, you applied an entrepreneurial mind. For anyone younger listening, what does that mean? And what lesson would you give them? That 7, that 8, that 9-year-old, the sons, the daughters of educators who say, now I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think I needed to find ways to make money. And again, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur as a kid. I just thought of myself as like, I can find a lot of different ways to make money. And so, another example, I think one of the worst things that's happened is that young people don't get newspaper routes anymore. So this was a family tradition of ours. When you turned 12, you took over a newspaper route. And again, you talk about every day it was 6 days a week, the Bergen Record. You had to deliver it where the people wanted it. You didn't throw the newspaper on their driveway. They wanted it inside their door. They wanted it through the slot. And then every Wednesday, Thursday, you'd have to go collect. And, that was responsibility. And so when I think about entrepreneurship they're like, I got a lot of jobs off of that. I had 50 people on my newspaper route. So I became the guy who you could call to say, hey, can you clean out my garage? Hey, can you rake my leaves? Hey, can you shovel our driveway when it snows out? And I think this idea, so I think, young people, 7, 8, 9, 10, like, hey, it's a hot summer day, go find a busy street corner and sell lemonade. Mm-hmm. There's just so many different ways to try stuff. And again, I didn't think of myself as an entrepreneur. I just thought of like, okay, I'm going to find different ways to make money. You hear about, students going out and buying snacks in bulk and then selling them to their friends. Like there's a lot of different ways, to do it.
As you're talking, I'm thinking networking. You networked with 50 customers on the newspaper route.
Yeah.
And that little bit of extra, just saying hi, checking in, and the doors that it opened.
Yeah, I think there's an element on the newspaper route, which is reliability. Like, so for 2 years, 6 days a week, you're proving yourself to folks that, okay, this is somebody who the paper's never wet when it rains out. The paper's always here on time. It was an afternoon. Yeah, it was so important. And then when the next job, as soon as I was old enough to get, my working papers, I think I was 14, I got this job as a golf caddy at a neighboring golf course. And this was northern New Jersey. So a lot of members were Wall Street executives. And so there, I think I learned how do you talk to business professionals? How do you ask? They were interested because I was studying business when I was in college. So they were interested in they were interested in me because I was this guy who was also interested in business. And so, and again, I got gigs off of that too. Cleaning pool furniture or raking leaves. I don't know. You learn a lot of humility. Like you could look at, I think one of the key things is no matter what job you have, be the best at it and don't just do what's told, but go the extra mile. So, I'm 14 years old. I'm showing up at the caddy yard and it's a seniority based system. I mean, you got folks driving in, taking the bus from New York City who are, professional caddies. This is their gig. They're not 14-year-old kids who are like, maybe I can earn some extra bucks. And so you got to pay your dues. Like, so I literally it was depressing. My first summer, I'd spend 4 hours up there. I'd ride my bike 3 miles. It wasn't uphill both ways. It was only uphill on the way there. But there were oftentimes I'd come home with nothing. You'd sit up there 4 hours and you wouldn't get called. And so I'd bring a book, I'd read, I'd occupy myself. And the caddy master would look at me and he'd say, you know what? Keep coming. Stick around. It's the people, because there were a lot of young kids up there. And, these are people who expect a high level of service. And so you just kind of observe, you watch how people behave, you kind of figure out, okay, what is my place here? And gosh, by my third summer, I was clearing $5,000 a summer, which, we're talking late 80s here. That was half my college bill. So persistence, I think that's a lesson in persistence, because there were probably 20 kids just like me when I was going up there. And I think 2 of us kind of continued, and it was hard. I'd go home. My dad would say, how much did you earn today? And I'd say, nothing. What are you doing up there? No, Dad, there's a lot of money to be made. You just gotta persist. And I think, so I would bring a book. I read a lot of books that summer.
And persistence is different than stubbornness. You saw a path, you were showing up, you were being encouraged.
Yeah. Yep. And I learned, I think that's the other thing. Like you go find the experienced caddies and okay, I'm not getting out there. I'm not getting a ton of experience, but you're just watching, observing, you're asking questions.
I want to get into next gen, Tim, but I'm going to tangent us one more time. I have an observation from a lot of interactions with both high school and college students that there is some fear in terms of approaching someone and asking for advice, saying, I'd like to learn from your experiences. You clearly did that quite well. What advice would you give to that high school, that college student who maybe lacks the courage to say help or I'd like to learn from you?
People want to help. I think it's so easy to be intimidated by people. Oh, they're not going to have time for me. Oh, why would they ever want to support me? I think people later in their careers are eager to pull the next generation up. And so and again, it's a conversation. So I think kind of just see it as an opportunity to do your research. When they say yes, do your research. And that conversation may lead to 3. You talked about networking earlier. When I have a conversation with a young person who's done their homework and is interested in getting into the finance field or interested in starting a business one day, being an entrepreneur, I'm going to spend time with them. Like I absolutely, if I could support someone who, because I know I got lifted all throughout my career. I mean, I had so many great mentors, so many great people who invested in me. Like, I want to do the same. So I think, and so who do you look for? So if you're in college, like your college has an alumni network, there's a special affinity to want to help people because, oh, you went to the same college that I did. Just find that commonality. I mean, because it can be hard to reach people. I'm not going to deny that, right? If you want to go talk to Mark Cuban, pick a number. Like, that's going to be hard to get through. But, business leaders in your community, and you're interested and you show that level of interest, because I think the other thing is write a really good email and you will stand out. Write an email that's persuasive, and then again, it comes down to persistence. But once you get in that network, you close the meeting with, hey, are there 2 or 3 other people you think who might be able to, who would be happy to have a conversation with me too? And then suddenly you're off to the races. But people want to help. I think that's the hardest for a young person. Like, why would they want to? What do I have to offer? Why would they want to talk to me? You generally find most people do want to help.
I'll just repeat: do your research and be persistent. If the first person you ask says no, don't say this doesn't work. Maybe you just caught them on a bad day.
Yep.
Right, Tim, let's dive into Next Gen. Let's dive into the path to Mission 2030, and let's start with, for anyone, what is NGPF? What is Next Gen?
Yeah, so Next Gen is a nonprofit. Next Gen Personal Finance, founded almost 7 years ago. It'll be early May. And there's really 3 parts, or our overriding mission. The reason I started the organization, and my co-founder Jessica is a Pennsylvania native. The reason we started it is just the belief that every student should have access, should be able to complete a course in personal finance while they're in high school. So many big decisions that are going to get made, right? What am I going to do after high school? How am I going to start establishing a credit history? What does it mean to invest in the stock market? How do I manage a bank account? So many of these things are happening, and I'd rather students not have to learn through the school of hard knocks. So we started it 7 years ago. It's really 3 parts to our business, and I think this integrated model, I think, has really been key to our early successes. And so first is curriculum. So we wanted to have the most comprehensive set of curriculum that was available. Teachers told us, I'm tired of going to multiple websites because one site is good at this, another is good at that. And so if you need a turnkey semester course or a 9-week course or a semester-long course, well, we have it. If you're just looking for supplemental activities, projects, case studies, questions of the day, current events, well, we have that too. If you want an incredible set of award-winning games, we have a NGPF arcade with nine games. And so that was the curriculum side. We wanted to make it easy for teachers to implement, but also incredibly engaging for students. So then the second piece of our business is professional development, because we recognize most teachers who teach personal finance may not have any formal education when it comes to personal finance. And so we wanted to be able to provide that service. And so today we offer professional development 3 ways. We have 10 to 12 1-hour virtual professional development sessions every week. We also offer certification courses in 10 different topic areas. So if you want to go deep in content, you get 9 hours of live instruction plus a certification exam. And then the third is on demand, because we know teacher schedules are crazy these days. And so if you want to learn, go deeper in a content area on your own schedule at your own pace, we have on demand. So those 2 pieces, we felt like if we got those 2 pieces right, it leads to the third, which is advocacy, which is our belief that change is going to happen here primarily at the grassroots level, because provide teachers with curriculum that they're really excited to teach, provide them a professional development so they're confident to teach the subject, then it becomes a lot easier to walk into the principal's office or stand in front of the board at your school board meeting and say, every student deserves this.
Tim, right? So years ago, Vanguard had done a study that said showed teachers were nervous to teach the subject, which no surprise when we look at financial statistics across America. We hadn't been taught prior to a lot of these recent efforts. There's brilliance in how you've set this up.
So there's actually, yeah. And let me tell you about some new research, because I felt like that was a real hurdle, and it wasn't what we were seeing in the professional development where we were partnering with educators. There was a study, I think it was University of Wisconsin, 9% of people who teach or would be teaching personal finance were confident to teach it. 9%. So that was a very easy way for state legislators to say, well, we can't make this accessible to all kids because we don't have the teaching corps that's trained, qualified, and confident to teach it. So really cool report just came out, and we can share this in the show notes, where we updated that study. It was done by Carly Urban and Melody Harvey, who are two great researchers around financial education. They modeled it, similar survey. They asked over 500 teachers, same set of questions, from 9% to 70%. 70% of teachers said they were confident. Why? Because there's a lot more high quality, no cost professional development available. That was the number one indicator. So 70% said they were very confident. I think 20% said they were confident. So it's changing the game. And our experience has been, since COVID hit a little over a year ago, what we have seen from teachers is just truly inspiring. Just the numbers are 6,000 teachers participated, 120,000 hours of professional development. So I talked about those three different types of professional development. Teachers want to learn this stuff. They are eager. So this idea of, oh no, we don't have the core of teachers, they want to do more. And so that's what gives me hope. That's what gives me inspiration every day to hear, because this is one of those subjects when a teacher participates in professional development, not only are they becoming better teachers, they're finding out that they're learning stuff that's going to make them more successful in their own financial lives. Like you talk about motivation, we see it. It's remarkable.
Tim, think underneath that, what students are learning, what students are taking away, and how their lives will be different than those that came before because of this knowledge.
Yeah, we hear it every day from teachers in terms of, thank you. Let me tell you about the impact it's having, whether it's Patrick Kubany up in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, who has a board where students put their name up there when they open a Roth IRA.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's in our documentary. We have a documentary titled The Most Important Class You Never, I'm probably botching the title now. I think it's The Most Important Class You Never Had. He's featured.
Recommend it, having watched it.
Yeah. So absolutely. It's students, but it's often not as dramatic as that. It's students opening bank accounts. It's students going home to their parents and talking about credit scores. Hey, how can you get a higher credit score? It's remarkable. Like anybody who spends time in a classroom teaching this stuff knows the impact is at an individual student level, and it often translates into the family also.
No doubt about it. If there was a way to measure the impact 5 and 10 years out from now, I would predict it as nothing but positive.
Yeah.
More entrepreneurism, better financial statistics, less stress.
Yeah. And there's a feeling of empowerment that comes with it. So you don't feel like you're a victim, because you understand what the rules of the game are, and you're getting ahead of it. Just take credit scores, for example. Boy, early mistakes. It's an elevator on the way down and an escalator on the way up, right? Those early mistakes can be so dramatic. Or student debt, right? If we can just get students and their families to plan out 4 or 5 years, instead of, Gene, I know you want to go to your dream school, we're going to make it happen. And it becomes a 1 year at a time. And then you graduate and the bill is that student debt is so much higher than maybe it would have been had you planned and made different decisions.
And Tim, I'm going to ask you a question I've always wished I would be asked. Can you tell us about the team that's helped you put this together? I've met some of them and I know they're phenomenal, but I'd be curious to hear more from you.
It's an all-star team. Yeah. And I think it starts with Jessica, our co-founder, because she had that unique background of being a math teacher, an assistant principal, and then one of the youngest principals in the New York school system. So I think the way she thought about curriculum was very different in terms of recognizing that, okay, this needs to be good enough for teachers, but it also needs to be good enough that when administrators take a look at this, curriculum developers or curriculum, the head of curriculum in a district, that they see the value in it. And so she really laid the tracks down early in terms of, okay, here's how we're going to create curriculum that teachers love. I would say, so what's common about the team? I think it's mission oriented. I think everybody who comes on board has that same belief. Boy, this was a course I wish I had. Boy, this is a course every student should have. And it's really an equity issue. I think if you talk to most team members, why are you passionate about this topic? I think it's about equity. It's about, when we look at the numbers, for example, it's 1 in 5 students nationwide are taking a personal finance course before they graduate. But you go into schools serving Black and brown students, it's about 1 in 14. And so we have to do better there. So we're devising strategies as to how do we ensure that access is broader within those communities. I think the other thing that's amazing about the team is the versatility. So up until very recently, we really didn't have an organizational chart because I don't want to put people in boxes, because what I find is that we have a really versatile team, and I think they really benefit. I told you about 3 parts of our business, and I think everybody pretty much participates in at least 2 of them. So you have folks who write curriculum, but they also provide professional development, people who provide professional development that also do advocacy and business development. And I think they love the ability to have a day full of variety, where 1 minute you're talking to state leaders about how do we increase access to financial education in their state, and the next hour they're hopping on a call with 100 teachers doing a virtual PD about investing. So I think when we really benefit, I think the third thing that's common is just the incredible work ethic. I think when you're mission oriented, it doesn't feel like a job. When you're mission oriented, there's a level of urgency to, like, every day before your head hits the pillow, or every night, are you thinking about how did I make a difference in the lives of teachers and students? And did I bring somebody else along on this journey? Did I help somebody else see the importance of the work? As well as the thing about this goal of all students is you never feel like you're done. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal. And when people say, congratulations, you've accomplished so much, there's still 4 out of 5 kids who are going off into the world, not very knowledgeable about how to manage their money. So a lot of room to go.
What's the path to start to knock away at those numbers? And I'm maybe tie in Mission 2030. How do you see us going from 1 out of 5 to 2 out of 5 to 4 out of 5?
Yeah, I think this is a Hemingway quote. It was slow and then it was sudden. I think it really, and there's some research out there that shows there's a bit of a ripple effect in terms of one district makes a commitment. Well, let me share with you some numbers. So the glass half empty is 1 out of 5. The glass half full is that there are 1,400 schools outside of states that require personal finance. So there's 6 states that currently require personal finance. There are 1,400 schools, and about 60 to 70 in the great state of Pennsylvania, where somebody stood up, a teacher, a student, a parent, the business community, a board member, the principal, the superintendent, and said, this needs to be a priority. Like, there's a million reasons, there's a million hurdles that we can put in place. But as my mom used to say, where there's a will, there's a way. Well, 1,400, close to 1,400 schools, they've managed to make it happen. So the path I see is a couple of things. First of all, we're going to announce something next month in April. That's an intermediate goal. We're calling it Mission 2025, which is there are still 30 to 35% of schools where there is not even a personal finance course in the books. There isn't a personal finance course, a semester-long course in the course catalog. So let's solve that problem. So we'll provide $1,000 grants to schools that go from not having a course to having an elective that they offer. And so
Tim, are you advertising that so schools know that that's available?
Yeah, we'll be announcing that in April. So we got to get the back end, we got to get the application process, all of that settled. So we will. And so the goal there is 1,000 schools. So it's $1 million program, because we know the path is slow. We know the path takes time. And so what we've seen for schools that have made it to the finish line, because we also have, if you're somebody listening saying, we already have an elective, I want to make it a requirement. Well, we got a grant program for that too. It's called the Gold Standard Challenge. And that's a $10,000 grant. If you can ensure that every student who graduates from that school is going to take a 1-semester personal finance course. So that's the other. What we've seen happen in the school community is you start with an elective, the teacher, gets excited about the course, sees the impact with the students start buzzing about it. You market the class, 1 section turns into 2 sections turns into 4. Suddenly, before you know it, you're off to the races. And it's like, well, there's 70% of kids and we got a wait list. Why don't we just make this a requirement? Like, you can't go 0 to requirement overnight. Like, it takes time. You want to build that capability within the school environment so that the implementation goes well. But we see it day in, day out. In fact, we just today, Christian, who leads our Gold Standard Challenge effort, we just hit 100 schools. So in the middle of a pandemic, 100 schools have made a commitment that every student will get a personal finance course before they cross that graduation stage. I think that's remarkable. So I could not be happier in terms of the pace. But again, I think it's going to be slow, and then I think it's going to be really fast. And I think there is, at some point, there's a top-down approach in terms of getting legislatures. We just did some research. 18 states currently in the 2021 legislative session have personal finance education legislation that's pending. So it seems like that's a rite of spring where these bills come out. But I'm hopeful that a couple will make it to the finish line this year.
At some point, that will be peer pressure in a positive fashion too, as your neighboring states start to get those courses. FOMO.
Yep, fear of missing out.
Tim, when you mentioned some of your statistics, are you speaking K through 12, 9 through 12? What's kind of the geography?
Our focus is high school. Okay. Yeah, so that's and it's an information issue. So we are going into course catalogs and identifying basically, and we have maps on our website by state, and we categorize schools in 3 different categories. Gold standard is every student who graduates will take a 1-semester personal finance course. Silver is a semester-long personal finance course that's an elective. And then bronze is personal finance standards appear in another course. Predominantly, we tend to see that in economics.
Tim, what can teachers do to help you accomplish both Mission 2025 and Mission 2030?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I think it starts with the basics of how can you make your course the best it can be. And so many teachers come to us and tell us about how excited they get about how they're thinking about, how do I make my course a little bit better? Like, we talk about compounding interest when it comes to the stock market. I think about compounding, and I try and practice this in my own, both the professional development I provide as well as my teaching during the summer. Like, if I can make that lesson a little bit better every time, then the next group who takes the course is going to be that much better off. And then you multiply that over years. Like, I hate to go back and look at my first year's lessons. Oh my gosh, that would be incredibly embarrassing. But I'm pretty proud of where it stands today, because I've had 9 years to kind of make it a little bit better. So make your course the best that it can be. And we're here to partner with you to help support you. And there's a phenomenal community called Finlit Fanatics. It's a Facebook group, over 5,700 teachers who teach personal finance. So now you meet your tribe in FinLit Fanatics, a really incredibly active group. Somebody puts up there, hey, I have a principal, I have observation tomorrow. What's a good budgeting activity idea? You'll get 10 different responses within probably 6 hours. Like the teachers helping teachers is that's a great group to kind of both bounce ideas off of other teachers, but also just feel like you're not alone. Because we also know most personal finance teachers may be the only person in their building who's teaching it. So now you found your tribe, you kind of this group of finance nerds, and the amount of sharing and collaboration is phenomenal. So I think that's number one, because when you make your course really good, if you build it, they will come, more students will come. And I think that's the key. And so what else can you do? You can set up a business advisory group in your, like when I think about, if you want to increase access to personal finance education, you got to build a coalition, so think about business people in your community, because business people see this every day. Oh, I hired young employees and they're really stressed out about their finances. Boy, I wish that was taught in school. Or reach out to board members, because most school boards are going to have business people on it too. And so again, appeal to them, this tremendous opportunity. We've seen teachers, we've seen students take the lead, and maybe with some nudging from teachers, like, hey, why don't we do a student survey at the school and ask students whether they think this is a course that's important. The numbers, and we have a universal survey up on our website, so you don't have to build anything from scratch. The numbers come out consistently, 85-95% of kids say they want it. Engage parents. So if you're teaching a personal finance course, we have a newsletter template, because we know how hard it is to get parents to show up. But boy, if you can send them a newsletter that talks about what you're teaching their kids, that can be helpful for them, but you're also building some potential advocates for you down the road. So there's a lot of different, I just want to make sure folks feel like we're here to help in terms of when you're ready to advocate, when you're ready to go to that next level. We have a board deck. If you get to the point where you're like, I want to sit down with the principal, or I want to sit down with the board and talk about this, we have that board deck talking about the impact that financial education has, the positive effects, with all the research studies that are out there to try and help you make the most compelling case. So our bet is that it will be teachers who make the difference here. And it will come from their passion, from their mission, the mission-driven nature. Teaching overall is so mission-driven, but I think you find another layer of mission when you're talking about the impact they see personal finance in their classrooms.
We'll work with you, Tim, to make sure we link all of this appropriately in the show notes so that it's easy for educators to find. Tim, one of the things I really admire about your work is how well you play well with others, for lack of a more professional term there. You've interviewed professionals, finance nerds, people all around the world. And I'm curious, since you sit in that unique position of having had this similar conversation with experts from all over, if there is anything that has surprised you as a part of this journey, or anything that where you just were like, wow, I hadn't thought of that angle, or maybe I disagree here.
Yeah, I think well, first of all, thanks for that, Gene. This is probably the second or third time I've been on the other side of the microphone. I like asking questions a lot better. That's an interesting question. I guess the similarities are, everybody you talk to from across the world recognizing, whether it's a researcher in Brazil or somebody starting up a charity in the United Kingdom, or somebody running a great educational program in Nigeria, just the passion. It's both the passion and the importance and the challenges. I would say that's the common thread that you hear. I mean, you hear it in their voice. They know, they have a personal story to tell about why this is such an important topic to them. Yeah. And I'm just thinking through like the paths. I mean, I've been so lucky to cross paths. There's Oren from Iceland who shows up one day on one of our virtual PDs and says, I'm a second career person. I was in the financial services field. I decided financial education is going to be my passion. And so he goes and gets his teaching degree, and he's in a classroom in Iceland, and he wants to build a national movement around this. And, and then there's another fellow whose name escapes me right now, Ed from the UK, similar finance background, started, saw that his children didn't really have this knowledge, even though he was in the finance field, but wanted to give back and started his own charity. So yeah, there's a lot of passion that people bring to this. And then I just think the challenge we all face is the distribution. We know young people need this, but they often don't come to it, right? And that's why this idea of the only place you can reach all kids is schools. And I think that's ultimately why the solution we chose was, let's work and partner with teachers, because we have an audience of students. Let's, make their experience in the classroom as positive as possible.
And you've done such an exemplary job of transferring ownership to those teachers. They get excited about the material. Tim, has anything surprised you where throughout this journey, is it the speed of the progress? Is there a surprise?
Things are never fast enough for me, Gene. Things are never, I mean, as an entrepreneur yourself, like the first 2 years, it was Jessica, myself, and Andrew, a third person, and we were just creating curriculum, because I didn't really want to market that heavily until I felt like we had a product that teachers would really enjoy. So I guess, the surprise is that 6.5 years later, there are 43,000 teachers who've signed up for teacher accounts. And we haven't had one district or one state mandate that you have to teach NGPF. And so I think that's the biggest surprise, has just been the tremendous word of mouth. Like our teachers have been the best marketers, because when teachers find something they like, they tell others. And we wouldn't be where we are without teachers also. Every startup is full of lucky breaks. We had a phenomenal group of early adopter teachers who kind of adopted us and said, we really like what you're doing. And most of our ideas come from just listening to teachers who tell us what they need in the classroom, and we try and deliver. I think the biggest challenge, now that we feel like we have a model on the curriculum side as well as on the professional development side, I think that the biggest challenge facing us over the next 9 years is, how do we rev that advocacy engine? How do we move from 1 in 5 kids to, in a couple of years, 50% of kids, to a couple of years after that, 75%? And a lot of people look at me like, you're nuts, this is never going to happen. But the things that are really hard to do, the things that are really worthwhile are really hard to do. And so I don't recognize that it's a difficult path ahead, but I think a lot of people would have been surprised that we are where we are today. And so put together a great team, have an incredible community of 43,000 educators. I wouldn't bet against us.
If I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would bet on you beating 2030, Tim. It was slow, and then it was sudden. We're going to remember that. And 43,000 unique educators, just so everyone hears that number. Tim, before we start to wrap up, with that entrepreneurial kind of tie, was there ever a moment of doubt?
There's always doubt.
In that 2-year period?
Absolutely. I mean, every venture I've been involved in, there's doubt. And then, because most ventures fail, right? I mean, most don't get off. This was probably from a business perspective. And we haven't talked about this, but one of the things we decided at the outset was we were going to provide everything at no cost to teachers. Because at the end of the day, you put up a paywall. If we're serious that we want all kids to get personal finance, you can't put up a paywall. And I guess one of the folks who had an influence on me, I was kicking around the Khan Academy offices in Mountain View early on. I think there were 4 people. at the time, Sal with some other business people. And I remember the conversation where people are like, Khan Academy at the time was taking off. And there were some people who were, he's a nonprofit. There were some people saying, you ought to start charging for this. Like the demand for this is incredible. And he's like, no, I said, free education for all. I don't want to have a conversation where, on the one hand, I'm trying to optimize a pricing model, but on the other hand, I'm telling people, oh, this is free education. Like I can't deal with that lack of congruence between kind of what I'm saying and then what we're doing as a business. And that just, at the outset, I said, what, I had some success as an entrepreneur and I'm going to fund this organization so that we're not dependent on outside donors, but we're also not dependent on charging schools. Because I can't imagine a better investment. When you think about just the dollars and cents impact this class can have on individuals, and they have 60, 70 years ahead of them. For me, I don't think there's anything even close from a return on investment perspective. So yeah, you absolutely have doubts. And from my perspective, that's always a great motivator. I took a class when I was in business school with Andy Grove, who was one of the founders of Intel. And he wrote a book, or I don't know if it was a book title but he had a phrase, only the paranoid survive. And so I'm paranoid. I'm always looking around the corner. I'm always trying to figure out why this movement is going to get blocked. Because that's how you got to always be thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead and recognize it's not a smooth path, and you got to try a lot of different things. I think that's the other thing as an entrepreneur is there's another phrase. I think if you're going to fail quickly, like fail quickly in terms of strategy, figure out that, okay, that path doesn't work. Let's go try something else. And not being too wed to, I think that's the other key is like not getting too invested in an idea, because you got to look at the data. If that idea is not working, you got to bury it and move on. Like don't get your ego too invested, because there's a lot of things we've done, that haven't worked. Oh, I could tell you there's a long list, and the number of ideas that Jessica, the number of bad ideas that Jessica stopped before they ever saw the light of day. I mean, that's a voluminous list. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Tim, there was a lot of entrepreneurial wisdom in that narrow segment. One thing I've heard on the entrepreneurial journey, when you have a partner like you and Jessica, did either of you ever have like the same bad day where you both doubted what you were doing, or was it kind of complementary over that 2-year building period?
That's a great question. I'm gonna answer a different question first, and that is yes. As an entrepreneur, if you can find a partner, because each one of the 3 ventures I spent the most time on had partners, and we had complementary skills. And so, with Jessica and I'm the wild, crazy idea guy. Jessica's the realist teacher in the classroom. How are we going to kind of take this idea and make it work, and implement it? And I think that balance is really important. Another business I was involved in, document destruction, the shredding business, I was the eternal optimist. And my partner tended to be a little more on the pessimistic side. And we tended to kind of meet in the middle. And so the results ended up being good. Because you want to make sure you have complementary skills and a ton of trust in that person. Because if we're both marketing experts and you're looking over my shoulder, Gene, saying, let's change this copy a little bit. I'm not sure that slogan's quite right. I don't think we should be doing Facebook. We should be doing Google. It's like, you're not going to get as much done because you're micromanaging each other. And then there's a trust issue. So yeah, finding that right partner is so critical. And I would tend to believe I'm just thinking even more recently, when I've had bad days, Jessica's lifted me, and I think I've done the same for her. So I think you feel like because you're co-founders together, like you can't both have a bad day. Otherwise, like the spiral occurs. So I think when I look at it, I think we both have risen up. Like we'll be on a call and it'll be clear that I'm having a bad day and she's gonna, no, remember this, Tim, remember that. I think we do a good job of boosting each other.
The proof is on the paper at this point, Tim. So Tim, final question. And my favorite to ask for our younger audience is, what advice would you give your younger self now with this wealth of experiences that you've now had?
I would start with early in your career, find a good mentor. I just think when you're young, it's so important to find somebody you look up to who's willing to, in effect, share and invest in you, because in effect that that's that hyper education. What else? I don't know. I think it's really important. My 20s, I felt like I had jobs that were all consuming, which ended up being good practice for entrepreneur. I was a consultant. I worked with a business consulting firm, and for 3 years it was 70-hour work weeks. And I learned more about business in that 3 years. And so I think oftentimes, and again, this is not a popular stance, I recognize that there's this desire, we got to have balance. And I think if there's a time to be, unbalanced, I think it's in your early 20s, before you have a family, before you have children, because if you're at the right place in the right situation, that can really hypercharge your career. What else? I was from a personal perspective, what I know now, it's that old Mark Twain quote about how, idiotic my parents were when I was 18. And by the time I turned 21, I was amazed at how much they'd grown in wisdom. I was a rebel. I mean, I was not nice to my parents as a teenager. So be nice to your parents, because as you get older and the perspective you have, you recognize how special they were. So that's just on a personal note.
Well, that could have been the 5 siblings as well.
Yeah. I think, I guess the other thing, as I think about it, times that when I think about turning points in my life and how difficult some of those decisions were, I'll just give you one. So I had an older brother who I really looked up to. He was a athlete. He was a good student. And so he went off and became a chemical engineer. And so he was about 6 years older than me. So I thought, okay, I'm good in math and science. I'll be an engineer too, a chemical engineer. Didn't really know what they did. Went off to college, and I always thought of myself as a good student. I always thought of myself as persistent, and I was not loving it. So kind of one semester in, I'm really struggling. And we all know challenges of going away for college, what that's like, but struggling like I'd never done before. And I was just struck by this, I got to stay the path. I got to be persistent. I have this self-image. And then there was another side of me which said, whose dream are you living? Like, is this something you really want to do? Like, why? And so I distinctly remember there was, like, you think about turning points in your life. I'm standing outside the dean's office because you have to get the dean's sign off if you want to transfer out of engineering to another program. And I was agonizing over it. No, I got to stick with it. Best decision I ever made. I went into the dean's office and said, get me out. And then I chose business, and it turned out that was something I really loved. So yeah, I guess the other thing is just make sure you're choosing your own path. Because it's very easy to follow somebody else's dream. But if it's not yours, life's a lot more play. And that was a tough semester when so now I'm out of engineering. I don't know what I'm going to do, but just have faith, have confidence that you're going to find it. And so don't necessarily take that prescribed path that somebody else has laid before you. Be willing to take the risk. You'll discover who you really are.
Tim, that's a message a lot of high school and college students need to hear. I see so much pressure on the shoulders of students to give off the impression they know what comes next.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this is my 8th job. My dad spent 43 years with the same company, a bank. He had different jobs in there, but I guess that's the other thing. Yes, this feeling, that's a great point. You don't have to know the answer. it's an evolving process. You're going to evolve as an individual. Just take one thing. I can go back and look at my 7 jobs before this and recognize how each one prepared me for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Tim, I'm proud to know you, and I'm proud to be a voice for the great work that you and the next gen are doing. Keep it up, and I hope I can be a small part in helping you accomplish.
Oh, you're a big part, Gene. Come on now. I love
Mission
the tools. I
2025.
love the tools you're building over at Troutwood.
Thank you. Tim, thank you sincerely. And to everyone tuning in, thank you for watching.
Thanks, Gene.